Hola chicos, gracias por sintonizar Bitcorner Podcast, el primer podcast salvadoreño de Bitcoin donde entrevisto a líderes, pensadores, economistas, políticos, educadores en Bitcoin y mucho más. Recuerda que este podcast es un puente entre todas estas líderes, pensadores y que están trabajando en Bitcoin y nuestra comunidad hispanohablante. Así que si quieres apoyar el show, por favor no olvides suscribirte al canal. Y si te gusta este tipo de contenido, dale el botón de like para que puedas compartirlo y llegue a muchas más personas. Y además no olvides darle a la campanita para que no te pierdas ningún episodio y te llegue la notificación de un nuevo episodio. Además, recuerda que este podcast no te ofrece ningún tipo de consejo financiero, es nada más para educación y entretenimiento, así que antes de realizar cualquier inversión, no olvides hacer tu propia investigación y sé consciente de tu tolerancia al riesgo. Ok, es hora de hablar del primer partner del podcast, que es donde yo protejo mis bitcoins, Blockstream. Cuando dejas tus activos digitales en un exchange o en custodia de alguien más, te expones a riesgos de terceros no deseados. A diferencia del sistema bancario tradicional, Bitcoin te permite tomar el control total de tus fondos utilizando tus propias claves privadas. Esto te permite ser soberano y esencialmente tu propio banco. Al tomar el control de tus Bitcoins, puedes evitar riesgos innecesarios de terceros. Almacenar tus Bitcoins en custodia de terceros como los exchanges puede exponerte a ataques de actores malintencionados, gobiernos o estafadores que lo único que quieren es apoderarse de tu dinero. El proceso de autocustodia puede parecer abrumador al principio, pero afortunadamente Blockstream Jade Wallet hace que sea súper fácil custodiar tus activos. Las billeteras de hardware son dispositivos que almacenan de forma segura las claves privadas de tus bitcoins y activos de Liquid sin conexión a Internet. Las billeteras de hardware aumentan la seguridad de tu billetera porque tus claves privadas se almacenan en un dispositivo especializado que no está siempre conectado al Internet. Como te he dicho antes, mantener tus claves almacenadas en un dispositivo en línea puede exponerte a factores adicionales de ataque, por lo que se recomienda usar una billetera de hardware al almacenar grandes cantidades de Bitcoin durante largos periodos de tiempo. Jade es una billetera de hardware no custodial para Bitcoins y Liquid que ofrece opciones de firma simple y firmas múltiples. Yo personalmente lo utilizo para almacenar mis Bitcoins, ya que me siento mucho más seguro manteniendo mis Bitcoins en una billetera fría que en una almacenada, por ejemplo, en mi teléfono. Si estás pensando en adquirir uno para ti, no olvides utilizar el código de descuento de nuestro show, BitCorner Podcast. De esta forma estarás apoyando directamente el show y además obtendrás un 10% de descuento para la compra de tu billetera fría. ¿Ok? Hora del show.
So, two experienced podcasters doing a joint episode have made the mortal sin of not pressing record. I'll hold my hands up. I'll hold my hands up to that. I do apologize.
Don't worry, mate. Don't worry.
We're gonna start again from the top. So we have a joint episode with Coach Carbon on the Carbon Life Pods, and also
Juan Cienfuegos from Bitcorner Podcast.
So we'll try and recap. I'll start with how we met. We won a competition via the Fountain app, which is where our podcasts are both hosted. I then, once I won the competition, put a little message out on Twitter to say, I've got some stats to give away. The first person to comment, and Juan commented, does this count? And fair's fair. I said, yes, it does. So I followed Juan's podcast, sent him some stats. He sent some my way. And then we thought, let's do a conversation together. Two bees on the pod. I realized we share the same initials as well, JC. There's something in those initials, if you're that inclined. But we had about a 50-minute conversation, which we're going to have to try and recap on. But let's start.
Yeah.
We'll start with the conversation I asked you. So your roots from El Salvador, currently living in Barcelona. The question I asked was, what are your thoughts on El Salvador taking on Bitcoin as a currency, as part of going on the Bitcoin standard? And what have you heard from people, family members and friends on the ground out there?
Yeah, so long short story. So start recap. I heard about I heard about Bitcoin in 2017 on the university, but as I heard it about as blockchain. So so the point of view of as an engineer, actually blockchain is really boring. So I was I wasn't interested enough about blockchain. I was like, all right, it's an old technology, but I know some advantages of it, but that was it. So I put it on a side, and then but that time my sister was living on Australia, and then she came back here, and she started talking to me about Bitcoin. So, and I was really curious because she comes from the finance perspective. She's a business administrator, and I'm an engineer. So I was like, this is why she knows about Bitcoin. So she told me about Bitcoin, and then one day I was talking with my dad, and he also mentioned Bitcoin. Then my sister talked to him about Bitcoin, and my dad is a doctor, so I was like, all right. So there's an engineer, finance girl, and a doctor, and they both are, the three of them are interested in Bitcoin. So there's something here. So I start to, studying about it, and then Saifedean brought his book, the Bitcoin Standard. It was, for me, that book was, as many other Bitcoiners, that's how it orange pilled me. So we were really interested about that. But before that, of course, we came also from shitcoins because we were in orange pill. So we were trying to figure out what was all of it. But again, when I read Saifedean, I was like, oh, all right. So now I get it, and put all shitcoins aside. And I start to orange pill also my family. So I told them like, all right, we're doing right, but there's something you need to know. And I explained them Bitcoin from that perspective, from Saifedean's perspective, that I think is the right way, because he told the story of the money history. So it's really good. And so then we continue our life investing in Bitcoin, studying more and more. But then we find out that Nayib Bukele was going to make it a legal tender. So we were like, what's going on here? And I started digging, and I heard the story about El Sonte, because El Sonte, it's really famous for surfers. But for us, we don't go that much to El Sonte if you're not a surfer. But if you're a surfer, that's the way. That's the place you need to go. So we should go to other beach. But I started digging about Sante, and I heard about the circular economy, and for me, it was really interesting because there was a poor community, but when I was digging and studying about it, I saw that there were some improvements, and I was like, wait, how? And then I start to understand that Mike Peterson was doing this project with local communities about Bitcoin, and we saw some improvements from all perspectives, So, and then when Bukele made it legal tender, that's how I understand it. That okay, you see some improvements, you see that that Bitcoin is, because again, it was like a poor area, and we saw some improvements. So I thought, all right. So, but that time I didn't know if Bukele was a Bitcoiner or he was just interested about this project, and he saw that something good was happening there. So he wanted to bring it to the entire country. But then I studied more, and I knew that I figured that he was actually a Bitcoiner, and then Max Kaiser went there. So for us, it was really amazing. Once Orange Pill was the greatest news of all time, because making legal tender was really, really good. But we really knew as a family that there's a long road, and actually it's a long road because you need a lot of education, because if not, I have shared this story in the podcast, that we have a history with the dollar, because long short story is that we had colones, that it was our currency, but in 2001 the government of that time wanted to find a solution, because we were experienced something like the corralito that happened in Argentina, like inflation. So they found a solution. They thought that, okay, if we bring the dollars, maybe we'll have something stable. But one colon, it was like, no, sorry, $1 it was 8.75 colons. So imagine the currency was devalued, but the savings but was divided by 9 for people. So they were angry about that. So I think people thought that bringing Bitcoin as a legal tender, it happened the same thing, but of course not. So that's why we need education.
Yeah.
And talking about in general in El Salvador, it's there are two sides. People that make it because in every country I think it happens that you make it political. So they thought some people that know about Bitcoin, the first time that they heard about Bitcoin was from Bukele. So maybe people are thinking like, okay, this is something political. He bought something new, and but in education about that. And then are Bitcoiners that are from around the world, and they are educating, like Max and Stacy and John Dennehy from Mi Primer Bitcoin and so on. So what they're doing is to educating other Salvadorians that are from different parts, and they become teachers, they become Bitcoiners, and then they go to their states departments, I don't know how to call it, and they teach Bitcoin through the necessities of that states,
Yeah.
And so I think that's the best approach, because you need to understand people's needs in order to bring a solution. So that's I don't know if I answered your question.
No, you did. And so from my perspective, falling down the rabbit hole in 2020, what I found fascinating is the speed of adoption and implementation. So knowing what was happening in El Zonte and Bitcoin Beach, then seeing Bukele announce it at the Bitcoin conference that it was going to be legal tender, and then seeing it happen. You mentioned about El Zonte. It getting better when they adopted Bitcoin or when they were using it, and also now El Salvador seems to be getting better. And it's not just the price value number go up, because you mentioned about the volatility. Also when you adopted the US dollar, and then there was some inflation there with Bitcoin, because it's so volatile. People are going to be overly skeptical. But what some people don't understand is with the adoption of it, it's not just the ability to use it. It's the, again, education. It's the understanding of how it can work, but also attracting people. So you're attracting, El Salvador are attracting Bitcoiners who some are wealthy, but some are technical. Everyone has their own talent, but because there is a shared belief in Bitcoin, they're drawn to El Salvador, and they're going to bring their skills with them, which is going to make the local environment, the local economy better. And seeing it in real time was just, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And again, people that don't understand Bitcoin, or you say make it political, will have their misconceptions about it. But seeing it on Twitter, on social media, and what's going on. So you had Jack Mallers doing bits with Strike out there. I've seen Peter McCormack's. He's done a documentary about El Salvador. He's met Bukele. There's so much content out there in terms of media, interviews, podcasts. Just if you can just orange pill a few people and say, listen, have a look what's going on. Yes, it's not perfect. There's going to be teething problems. But you mentioned Max Kaiser, Stacey Herbert, they're doing some great stuff out there. I think the volcano bonds are now live. Is that right? So a lot of people that are talking about that. And I go. I'm excited. I want to make a trip to El Salvador myself. I said to my wife and family that I want to make it. I wanted to go this year. It hasn't quite transpired, but 2024. I think before I press record, we were talking about the halving.
Oh, yes, true.
Yeah, the halving party. So if I can make it to El Salvador for that halving party, I'll be very happy.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I forgot to mention, that people asked that why Bukele brought Bitcoin to El Salvador, and the short answer is because most people didn't have the ability to go to the banks or to get bank services, because when you live in a poor area, you have to take a bus that it takes like 30 minutes to go to the bank. But during that road, it could happen a lot of stuff. And by that time, you know, everyone knows El Salvador was dangerous. So you could be robbed, you could be killed. And you have to take like half of your day to just to go from home to the bank to deposit the fiat money and to pray that nothing happens to you. So I think that's really important, and not just the Bitcoin adoption, but all the work that Bukele is doing in terms of security, because you know, they need to go hand by hand, because if not, the adoption will be really difficult. But now you have both sides. You have security, but also you have the Bitcoin adoption, because if you have a phone, you can download not just Shiba wallet per se. You can download any wallet that doesn't require KYC, and you have instant access to financial services without the bank. So that's the main thing that he fixed it with Bitcoin. So, and of course the security. So they go hand by hand.
Yeah, definitely. And those are things that people don't realize or are aware of. So you're thinking about, it's not just a number go up technology. It's, as you mentioned, people that have to travel half a day to go and deposit money, withdraw money. There's less risk of them being robbed, but then also the time value. They now have more time that they can spend at home working or with their family that they wouldn't have before. So yeah, there's so many positives by, I say, adopting, by understanding it. And I argue, if someone had done 100 plus hours of learning, that's listening or reading, or watching videos, I don't think you'll be against Bitcoin, or to say that it's not a viable technology that's going to help humanity. And it sounds like all evangelical when you talk about fix the money, fix the world. But the more you dive down into the rabbit hole, for me, the clearer it becomes. Although some of the information is like, well, I've got a lot of understanding to do. Like the knowledge that I've amassed has been great, but I know there's so much more that I need to understand. But what I try to do now, through everything I do with the health and wellness, the wealth education, and the podcast, is just to give people touch points. Because I had a few touch points before I fell down the rabbit hole, and I wish somebody would have just dragged me by the arm a bit firmly and said, "Come on, do a bit more reading, do a bit more listening, take some information on board, and see what you think."
Absolutely. No, and I think that education is really important. You know, I have a personal story that one of my best friends used to be my roommate, and she's from El Salvador also, and she knows that I'm all into Bitcoin, but she's not. So she told me like, but I want to invest a little bit in Bitcoin. Could you help me to invest in it? And I was like, all right, this is not an investment. So, and I had the Bitcoin standard. So I told her, you're from El Salvador, you need some education. You should read this book. Read it, and when you once you read it, come back and we'll start talking. And you'll see that it's not about investment. This is something way better. So right now she has she has something to do.
Again, proof of work. She reads the book, and then she'll have a bit more understanding. Then you can have a further conversation.
Exactly. And talking about rabbit hole journey, can you share a bit about your rabbit hole journey?
I'll touch upon my pre-corona days. So 2018, I was into stocks and shares a little bit. So in a former life, I was a project manager in construction. I had a new project started. My site manager on the job said, "Oh, can I bring in my gaming chair and my GPU?" I said, "Yeah, that's fine." Brought it in. It turns out he was mining Bitcoin. We had conversations about money investment. I was telling him about my shares. He was trying to tell me a little bit about Bitcoin, but just kind of dismissed it. And one day, I think I'd seen it on the news about mining and people going to colder climates to mine. I had no idea. So I asked him a question. I said, "Oh, what's all this mining stuff?" And he laughed. And then there was a labourer on site as well. They both laughed. And from this point, when I look back, I think two things should have happened. One, I shouldn't have been so proud because I just looked and went, whatever. But I think what also he should have done is said, "I'm only joking, come and this is what it is." And so that touch point was like just gone. And so everything I do now, I refer back to that moment and think, I can't have anyone say to me in 4 or 5 years' time, say, "Our coach, when I wanted some information, you didn't quite help me." I want people to know that I was there, available, giving people the information that I understood and giving them touch points to help them on their journey. So fast forward then 2 years, we have COVID happens. I have redundancy from work and have a bit more time on my hands. At this point, I'm just concentrating on health and wellness. I'm getting fitter, helping people live healthier lifestyles. I'll come back to that in a minute because it ties in with the whole Bitcoin mindset. But with the free time I had, a friend of mine in the group chat said, who wants to speak about crypto? That was the word crypto. So I said, why not? And the reason why is because I'd missed out on an opportunity 5 years before on something, which I was then starting to work on at that point. So I thought, I'm not going to miss out again. I have the time. Let's talk about it. First thing he said was personal responsibility, do your own research. So I did a month of deep dive, again, listening to all the podcasts I could, reading books, watching YouTube videos. And by the end of that month, I must say I probably did about 9-10 hours a day, and I was just consumed by it all. And at the end of that month, I just thought, this is it. This is the thing that humanity's been looking for. This is what I've been searching for my whole life. This is going to be great. And I just went on a rampage of sending people information. Looking back now, it's probably a bit too much. So I've changed the tact of the way I communicate with people. But shout out to Robert Breedlove, because I watched his 3-part series, Masters of Slaves and Money. And that broke it down without even mentioning Bitcoin, I think, until maybe the 3rd episode of what money is relating to time, energy, and value. And I was like, yeah, this I understand what money is now, and I understand how Bitcoin can help solve it. So from that point on, it was just reaching out to people on social media. I was on Twitter before, not really active, but then reigniting my love for Twitter. That's where I've met most of my connections. And then in 2021, I joined a Bitcoin learning group with Daniel Prince and a guy called Alvaro San Martin of Minds Group. We used to join once a week. There's about 15 of us on the call all around the globe. So we spoke about it before I pressed record about Bitcoiners coming together from around the world with shared values and beliefs. And one particular call, early 21, we had John Vallis on. And when I tell people the story of John Vallis, they're like, who? But for me, at that point, it was like, oh my gosh, John Vallis, I'm on a call with him. And so we had to introduce ourselves and talk about what we would do. And I said, well, I'm new into Bitcoin, I want to provide value back in the space, help educate people, but I'm not an engineer. I'm not into software. I don't know how my skills are relative or how they can help. And these words I'll never forget. He said to me, well, why don't you provide value in your community? And at that moment, the penny dropped, and I thought, it's football. I understand football. I love football. I love Bitcoin. I can see how the principles and fundamentals tie in together, such as your proof of work, which is your performance, your fight in the FUD, which is self-belief. You got your teamwork in there. Do your own research. There's so many elements that come together. And that night, I created Bitcoin Ballers, and I thought this is the way that I'm going to help people understand Bitcoin through their proof of work, through skills. So I did a lot of online stuff. People could enter competitions by doing skills. Sometimes it was just interacting with the page, and I would give them sats using the Lightning Network, which I'm amazed, obviously, the amount of Bitcoiners that don't know about Lightning, because obviously when I got into the space, Lightning was just coming up or just being a known thing. So for me, I've always interacted with Lightning. So for me, it was the main way to go. So fast forward a few years, I've hosted football competitions for young people at winter, called it the Winter Cup Festival. I've had 2 of those. I've entered teams into competitions, the 6-a-side, 7-a-side competitions. So we've had boys teams, girls teams, senior teams, got to a final of a couple of those. I've actually won a couple of trophies. I'm now working towards getting a team to the TST, the soccer tournament in America. They've just had their first one a couple of weeks ago. The next one is 2024. The prize is $1 million.
Wow.
My mission is to win that and convert that Bitcoin and help with education, so support different projects and obviously help Bitcoin borders get on the global map. But for me, it's just dream big. You never know what's going to happen. I'm trying to contact loads of Bitcoiners in the space who I know are into football. I've had a few on my hit list, so that's my mission. I've also reached out to
that's so cool.
Bitcoin Amsterdam. I'm hoping to have a competition there, football competition there this October. And just before the call, I've had a local tournament contact say there's a space. So I've got a team entered in the tournament this Saturday. And it's the one we won last year. So I'm hoping that we can, again, proof of work, retain the trophy. and then a bit more bragging rights and a lot more positivity to show on social media to rally the community.
That's so cool.
It's been a whirlwind of 3 years, but I've learned so much, met some amazing people, had a great time. And for anyone that's questioning, okay, what is Bitcoin? For me, is just delve your head into the rabbit hole, and you'll see so many people using Bitcoin for their advantage. But it's allowing them to flourish for their creative skills. I've mentioned it on podcasts before. So myself doing the football, you have people who are into running using Bitcoin as a medium. You've got artists, you've got musicians, filmmakers, people doing clothes. There's whatever you think about as a career profession, or whatever you don't know about a career profession, somebody is utilizing Bitcoin and the community to help them flourish, to get their message out there. And a prime example, even if you didn't want to use Bitcoin and didn't understand it, it's about the connection, the network. You can interact with someone across the globe. We're having this conversation now. This conversation will be put on a Bitcoin podcast. People can send sats, or they can receive sats from this podcast anywhere in the world just by listening. If you have a product to sell, if you try to go through the traditional finance routes, there'll be flags all over the show. Where's this money going to? Who's it from? You'd get stuck with conversion rates. It would take a couple of days to probably settle. Whereas I could sell something now for the value of £1 in the UK, or I could buy something for the value of $1 somewhere else, and we can settle that transaction instantaneously. And you could be anywhere in the world. All you need is a mobile device or a connection to the Bitcoin network, and you've got people in Africa using old school mobile phones, SMS text messages to receive Bitcoin. Like, the barrier is getting less and less. And for me, just understand it. Early adopters are going to benefit the most. If you have an idea, run with it. Have a conversation with someone that understands Bitcoin and see how you can make it work for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, now that you're talking about that, I think we should talk about value for value, because basically that's what you're talking about. Yeah, because that's one thing that I love, like platforms, for example, one time that listeners get sats and us get sats through donations or whatever. But it's really important, because not just about the monetary thing, but for example, if you launch a project, for example, in Geyser, or even in your own website, and you use Bitcoin, there's something way different that is happening right now, because normally, if you want to launch something by yourself, even if it is a small or or a medium company, or just a small project, you need it to be sponsored by a big company normally, and expect something on return to them, and but monetarily. And here's way different, because it's peer-to-peer. You don't need a company to sponsor you. There's people that read and study what you're doing, and if they feel identified that okay, this person is bringing something valuable to his community, or through the society, or even through the internet, and say, okay, I feel related with that. I think it's going to bring something valuable, so I'm going to donate some sats. And the person doesn't expect some sats in return. What they expect is something valuable, but real, for real, right? So that's something that I like about, even as you mentioned, through Lightning, because Lightning, it's basically instantly, and you can do it across the world. So as you mentioned, you are lowering the barriers, so now you're giving more chance, more opportunity to people that basically never expected in their entire lives to have an opportunity. For example, I interviewed a couple of weeks ago Gabi Vivas. She's a girl from Venezuela, and she told me a story that a family that they were really poor, and they somehow listened. They somehow they learned about Bitcoin. So, and what they did is that they were a family of 3 kids, and the wife and the husband, and the older kid, he's around 17, I think. He started studying about Bitcoin through his phone, and he understand that. So what they did is that they start building a farm to, where you can get the lactose from the cows and make cheese and local cheese and whey natural and everything. They also have chickens, and they start selling eggs, natural eggs. So, but what they did is that they came with this idea that brought people from around their neighbor, and they start teaching about Bitcoin. So they sit in the farm, they get a coffee, they start asking questions about Bitcoin, they taste the product, and they like it. They buy their products, so they're making money. So, but with this money, they are growing, so they're bringing more people, because from how I say it, from mouth to mouth, people
Word of
speaking.
mouth. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So those that community, people are starting to understand Bitcoin from peer to peer. So, and they're attracting more people. They are growing their business, but at the same time, they are educating more people. So they were poor, but now they are growing, and they find a solution to make some improvements in their life. Just not just monetarily, because they're making some really valuable connections, and at the same
It's
time, they're making a beautiful farm.
it's the social aspect as well, isn't it? Which is they say value for value, not just monetary terms. They're getting the community together, people are understanding what they're doing, and they're actually the product that you're providing is really good. We're going to buy from you. In word of mouth, spread the message. And so that all comes into like network effects, which at the time of understanding Bitcoin, that's what I was big on. I was into network marketing. And so when I saw how the communities aligned, network marketing and Bitcoiners, people have gone out their way in both communities to help me for no instant reward to themselves, just because they see a benefit of helping people. Um, and it's funny because people looking in on network marketing and then Bitcoin would have preconceptions about it, misconceptions, say, oh, it's this, it's that. But my argument was always in, well, they're both opt in, no one's forcing you. And if you like to, you can opt out. But generally, you find when people opt in, they stay in. What are the reasons for that? So I always say to people, don't knock it until you try it. And once you've tried it, you can have your opinion. I'm not going to dismiss your opinion, because that your opinion comes from your experience. But from my experience, all I can say is that it's made me a better person. It's made me have a better life. I enjoy my time more. My family enjoy my time more. I think because I'm more positive with my mindset and my outlook on life. So from my experience, I would suggest people to have a look into what Bitcoin can offer. But it's going back, sorry, to when we spoke before the recording, talk about network effects and community. I mentioned I visited Barcelona last year, saw a few Bitcoin signs, didn't meet any Bitcoiners. Now we have Orange Pill app. I've saw one of your podcasts where you interviewed some people from Barcelona. They have their own Twitter page. Within a year, if I go to Barcelona now or any other city, I have the Orange Pill app. I can open it up. I can see who's close by, and in your local area, it might be lonely, but when you visit other places, you can find out people that have shared values. And I mentioned that somebody who was visiting the UK from Australia came to Oxford. We did a tour around the city, and we got on very well. But the connection that we had was we both like Bitcoin. That was it. But we had a great tour around the city, great conversations about technology, people we've met, and there were so many mutual connections that we've made. So I keep saying via Twitter, because that's mainly where the Bitcoiners hang out. But having people create now products that Bitcoiners can use. You mentioned Giza Fund, where people can donate to projects. We have Orange Pill app now, which is a social media connection app. There's so much out there that people don't see what's going on. And so I say to people behind the scenes, well, not even behind the scenes, people in the space know there's so much movement in the technology. There's so much progression, and you have people from all across the world adopting it. We mentioned El Salvador. Obviously, you have, say, the Western world. You've got UK, America, but Africa, South America. Lots of people on different economic levels now have a level playing field to compete on in terms of networking, in terms of economic um, accessibility. And so, even if you don't think Bitcoin is viable in terms of volatility, the technology, the underlying layer that people are using then to transact and communicate is just incredible. You can't dismiss that. For the millions of people that are using it, you cannot dismiss it. And you mentioned for people's lives that are becoming better, areas improving, that's the proof of work. You cannot dismiss that.
Absolutely. And shout out to Orange Peel app, because if you're in Salvador and you're Salvadorian, no, if you're Salvadorian and live in Salvador, it's free for you. So download it.
Again,
they are not sponsors.
Value for value. In El Salvador, it's free because that's now the home, the mecca of Bitcoin. But
yeah,
there's certain pay scale you can have for the app. I don't think I've paid for an app before in my life, but I paid for this app, and I think I'm now a lifetime member. So I put a one-off payment paid via Lightning, but that takes away from on social media. You have bots and you have people scamming. That takes away that. Well, adds an layer of security to get rid of those bots and scammers. But then the value for value, I know now the people that I'm connecting with want to be there. They've paid the price to be there, so they will kind of have aligned incentives. There might be some people that have some misaligned incentives and might be some scammers, but it's going to cost them to do that. So there's a security level or buffer level. I know I'm conversating and connecting with people that when I say hello and they respond back to me, we're probably going to have a meaningful conversation.
That's so cool. That's so cool. Yeah. You mentioned that you know a lot about football, and I'm really curious. What's your team?
Arsenal. I'm a long
Arsenal, really?
lifelong Arsenal fan. Yeah.
Wow.
Yourself?
If we're talking about the Premier League, I love Manchester United.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about any other team?
Any other team? Yeah. Real Madrid here. But here in Barcelona, they're going to kill me. But that's what it is. And in El Salvador, there's a club that is from my parents' town that's called FAS, Club Deportivo FAS, from Santa Ana, and they're making it really good. So
okay. I'm really disappointed that I didn't meet any Bitcoiners in Barca, because I actually took my Bitcoin baller shirt. So on the weekend I was away, I had entered some teams into a local competition. So some friends of mine managed it. But I actually took a video outside the new camp with a little promo video to say wishing them all the best. But I had the shirt on. I've got some photos that I use, pointing to the Satoshi 21 on the back outside the new camp. Unfortunately, it was closed. They weren't letting any visitors in. I went early in the morning. And it's really warm as well. But yeah, I'm glad that I went to visit and just had a look around the stadium. Yeah,
they're making a new stadium right now.
Are they? Where about?
Right there. So they're now they're starting to making again, like they're destroying it and then they'll start building again.
Yeah.
Cool. So yeah, you'll have to wait to try again at least for a year, I think. Okay. But yeah, hopefully we will orange peel some people there.
Yeah, my wife and I, we had a great time there, so we do hope to go back soon. I'm not sure how she'll feel about me now, knowing there's other Bitcoins out there. There's a community. She might say she wants some time with just us, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, but yeah, I don't know. Here in Barcelona, I think one of the great aspects about here is that it's and I think also in the UK that it's multicultural. So there's a lot of people around the world. So you can orange peel them and they can spread the world. And they're really open-minded, because again it's multicultural. So you meet people from around the world. So you have a mixture of every culture. So you have that advantage that people are they want to know your story, so they're open to that. So yeah. Absolutely. Any other question that you want to ask?
So in terms of we mentioned El Salvador, where you are now, have you been to any events locally, any conferences?
Conferences this year, and I'm focusing on the podcast, but there are a lot of meetups here in Barcelona. Actually, on Thursday, we will have one that the theme is that they are going to teach how small businesses and medium businesses can adopt Bitcoin through Lightning. So I think it's a good opportunity, especially if you're an entrepreneur. But yeah, they make meetups every month. So, but conferences, I'm planning to go next year to everywhere I can. So I'm planning to go to Nashville. I'm planning to go to Adopting Bitcoin, the halving party, and if there's something here, I think Prague could be, because this year they told I saw on Twitter that it was amazing. So
They look
I don't know.
incredible.
Yeah, how about you?
So last year I went to Avon Valley Adventure Park. That was really good. That was for the families and young people.
So
Um,
cool.
then yeah, Amsterdam. I went to the conference in Amsterdam, which is also incredible. This year had a quiet one. I had a ticket to Miami. I won a ticket, but didn't unfortunately didn't quite make it out through other commitments. So yeah, 2024, like you would like to hit most of them. So yeah, Nashville or Amsterdam later on this year actually. Would like to make that there. I mentioned looking into hosting the football competition. So if I can tie that in as a satellite event, I think that will springboard Bitcoin ballers into 2024 and let us try and achieve everything that we want to.
I have a question that it came to my mind. How do you see uh the comparison? Well, actually no, about the I'm thinking about regulations, because I remember that a few months or last year, the new prime minister that talked about and publicly about this new CBDC that they want to bring. So I don't know how that's going, and hopefully bad. And how do you see Bitcoin, not adoption, but the uses of there are, I don't know, do you see some pubs that use it, or any local areas?
Yeah. So
What's your experience there?
you talk about CBDCs in general or in the UK?
No, in the UK, because and actually they want to do this, how, British coin, or I don't know, but the name was really bad.
Yes. So CBDCs, for those that don't know the term, central bank digital currencies, they've been muted for a long time, but now becoming a bit more apparent, especially after COVID and the lockdowns. So I see that CBDCs are the antithesis to what Bitcoin is. So
Absolutely.
Bitcoin is peer-to-peer, freedom money. CBDC will be controlled by one entity, and everything will be able to be controlled by them. In the UK, so I think they Rishi Sunak
Yeah.
coined the term
Basically, basically, surveillance capitalism,
it's
basically.
a surveillance coin, yeah. But
Yeah.
Rishi Sunak, who was chancellor at the time, now prime minister, coined the term Britcoin just to muddy the waters even more. So
Bitcoin, yeah.
when people hear Bitcoin and they hear Britcoin, they're going to think, oh, they're one of the same thing, but not realizing one's issued and controlled by the government and one is freedom peer to peer.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, in response to that, people in the space in the UK, it's terrible, I've forgotten the guy's name, but what I'd do, I'll add it in the show notes. He's created Bitcoin Policy UK.
Uh-huh.
I'm going to get his name up now.
Yeah, yeah, go
That's
ahead. No
doing him
worry.
an injustice. He's actually messaged me on Twitter because he sent me some sats yesterday.
No, don't
Wait.
worry. Yeah, but I think it's really important to know this stuff, because
Freddie knew is his name, and he
all
had a
right.
podcast with Peter McCormack. Which, if you want to listen to that, it's a great conversation for somebody who's been in this space a while. But yeah, he's created a group called Bitcoin Policy UK,
Cool.
which hopes to influence the policy on Bitcoin and digital assets as a whole in the UK. I think they do incredible stuff. They've made people aware of the CBDC framework that's gone out for people to question. And so, as governments, they have to release information for people to question. And it turns out that governments, as they are not very good at administration. They issued something with a question missing. So I think they had 10 questions that people could answer, and there was no question number 9. So then they had to extend the deadline date. It was just like, if they can't get that right, I don't expect them to get a digital
Absolutely.
currency right.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, but I think it's really important, because, as you mentioned, CBDCs are the antithesis of Bitcoin, and people I don't know. I think it's really important to mention this as much as Bitcoin, that because people need to know and be aware about what are the disadvantages and everything that will come with CBDC, all the limitation. We have seen a little bit about that, for example, in Canada, not just in terms of CBDC, but you know that one it was last year during the COVID. I don't remember that people were trying to make some crowdfunding for the truckers and through fiat, so they, you know, they were prohibited by that, and then people started supporting through Bitcoin, and they couldn't stop it. So you see the difference, that what is freedom and what is slavery. Yeah.
And I think that is why governments are doing their best, say, to muddy the waters with the CBDC. Because of COVID and lockdown, people using their debit cards a lot more. They increase the value. That can be done contactless. The government can easily say now, okay, with your account, we're going to top you up with free money that you can go and use, and people would take that. I think there's a term for UBI, Universal Basic Income, and they take that and not understand the ramifications. Whereas Bitcoin adoption, it's going to take a bit more education and understanding, but there is a difference. And so you asked a question about adoption where I am at the moment. Oxford City Football Club, who are sponsored by Coin Corner, they've actually just won promotion to the National League. They accept payment over Lightning, so you can come to a football game and you can buy a seat, you can buy your ticket, you can buy food and drink. You can also use it at the club shop using Lightning. My mission at the moment is to help business people and businesses understand how it benefits the club directly. We mentioned instant final settlement there. It enables them to open up their businesses to Bitcoin community globally. They're not just fixed on the local economy. There's so much to be done, so much work to be done, and again, we're going up against actors, and I would call them bad actors. You're going against nation states, you're going against central banks, but it's a fight I think we can win, and I think it's a fight worth having.
All right. You also mentioned that you're trying to make some competitions and also to bring, you know, the use of Bitcoin through those competitions. But have you planned to make a competition with Real Bedford? With Peter McCormick?
I spoke on a podcast recently, I think, with Daniel Prince, to see if we could get
okay.
a game together. Because my involvement with the club is not with the first team; it was with the under 23s or reserve side. I don't organise fixtures for pre-season. But it just transpires things move quite quickly. So Bedford got promoted and released their preseason fixtures. Oxford City got promoted. I think they're just releasing their preseason fixtures now. So a lot of stuff has already been done, but there is a possibility of Real Bedford and Oxford City meeting in a cup, in the National Cup this year. So fingers crossed, we get
wow,
luck of the
hopefully.
draw and get a fixture together. That would be really good. Battle of the Bitcoiners teams, but also then it will put the teams in the spotlight, but also people ask questions. Okay, these teams have Bitcoin connection. Why is that? What is it offering? What are the benefits of that? So there, I'm excited for both teams this season. So yeah, you ask about which teams I support. Yeah, Arsenal lifelong fan, but yeah, Oxford City and a Real Bedford fan as well.
Of course, we all Bitcoiners, I think we are fans of Real Bedford. So yeah, they are really good. And have you seen changing a little bit? Well, no, it's the same topic. But have you seen Ted Lasso by chance?
I haven't. A lot of people ask me.
have,
Obviously, I'm into
you
football.
have to watch it.
Have you watched Ted Lasso? I see a lot of the memes about it. People talk about it a lot. So it's on the list. But being a Bitcoin, as you know, a lot of time is devoted to education of Bitcoin. So if I do watch a series or program, it's very, very rarely. So I'll have to put it on the back burner. But it's on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. But you know, you're a footballer, you're a coach. So I think you will love it because again, me also, I don't have much time, but I like to watch some TV shows, and one of them was Ted Lasso because you know it was related with the Premier League, and I was like, so you know, it was a coach that was in the US training. I think it was a football team, but their football.
Yeah, yeah.
So there wasn't soccer. There was football, American football. So they came here and they saw the real football. Sorry, guys. they saw football, and so it's really interesting. It's really fun, really funny.
It's
And
funny you mentioned that because I was listening to Flirting with Bitcoin yesterday. So Flirting with Bitcoin is a podcast that I listen to on the Fountain app, a husband and wife that talk about Bitcoin. But they mentioned Ted Lasso, and he did a comparison between what people think about Bitcoin and what people thought about Ted Lasso. And I think his analogy was people aren't asking the first question. I don't want to give too much away because I haven't seen it, but it was talking about him playing darts. Is there a scene when he was playing darts and somebody thought they could beat him? And he said,
go ahead.
I may be giving something away. But basically, Ted was saying, nobody asked the first question, can you play darts, Ted? And basically, what the guy from Flirting with Bitcoin is saying, no one's asking the right question about Bitcoin, like what is
That's
money
true.
or what is
Yeah.
Bitcoin? People just have their preconceptions by hearing it from something else.
Yeah, absolutely. That's true. Yeah, that happened in the first season. So, but yeah, absolutely.
Sorry,
So
Ian from Flirting with Bitcoin. If I butchered that analogy, I apologize, but I took something from it and I passed it on.
no, but it's true. Actually, it is true. That's one of the things that I love about Ted Lasso because, of course, it's funny, but it actually brings some value to the society because that he asks some question because he's learning from the bottom about football because he knows American football, but he doesn't know anything about um, football in general. So that's a process, and I think I just said it's really a comparison between Ted Lasso and Bitcoiners because we're learning, and before you become a Bitcoiner, you barely know about Bitcoin. You barely know about money. Actually, you need to understand the um, the money history in order to understand Bitcoin. So yeah, I think that could be also an analogy.
So
Yeah.
you, talking about obviously learning, you said you got into the space about 2017 or started to understand in 2017. Have your friends and family who aren't into Bitcoin, have they seen a change in you? And what are their thoughts and comments?
Have they seen what? Sorry.
A change in you in terms of your
Ah,
mindset and attitude.
absolutely. Yes. My parents and also my friends because not just what I do for a living because I started during COVID. The company that I was working on closed because of COVID, so that's how I became a freelancer. So I started making articles on Medium. Medium was kind of new, so but that time, so they wanted to push every new articles, every new writer. So by that time, I was making digital culture articles, most of them based on Apple because I love Apple. So um, and then I start to writing about other stuff. But then once I start learning about Bitcoin, I not pushed aside, but I dedicated more about Bitcoin, and they saw that I'm more aware in other stacks for other stuff. Because, for example, I think one of the people are educated, or I don't know how to say it, is that if you're not doing any a work something in during the day, if you're not productive, like you're wasting your time, and
Mm.
that's not true. What and I think that's something that because I don't know if it is because we're close to the states that in the United States they have also this mentality that you have to start to be working all the time, and in Latin America we also need to work the whole time. If not, you're not valuable, and but that's actually that's something that I see way different here in Europe, and that I start to value. And once when I start learning about Bitcoin, also I became more aware of that people here work but to enjoy the life. That's why, for example, now that we're in summer, people are crazy about summer, but it's not because they're lazy. I think it's because just somehow appreciate your time. So and even the companies make some efforts that you can spend more time freely with your family, with your friends. I don't know. I'm talking generally. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's my point of view, my perspective. So, and when I became a Bitcoiner, I was like, all right, I need to. It's not that I had to work every single day, every single time. It's just about being more productive in order to spend more time with my family, with my friends, with my loved ones. So, and I learned it through Bitcoin, because you have this. How was the term that you see the short and long
Time preference?
term? Yeah, time preference, absolutely. So I became more aware of that. So, and even living here in Europe, I was more aware about that, because also my friends that live here, not just Europeans from around the world, Americans, Latin Americans, but they live here. There's a different lifestyle, so you learn from them. So I think that's how maybe they saw my change. And what about you?
Wicked. Yeah, so I think understanding, you mentioned time preference, time being your most valuable asset, but also is finite. Like nobody lives forever. When you discover a technology or understand a technology that will allow you to store your energy, your life force in terms of money. So when we do work, we get value back in terms of money. If you can save that and store that, and it's worth equal amount in the future, that's what we're looking for. We haven't got that in terms of the monetary system we have now, fiat system, because everything gets inflated. Your money devalues over time. So with Bitcoin, without a promise of without the promise of going up in value, sorry, just maintaining your purchasing power, that's a viable technology. But what we've seen, the way the software is written, how the halvings work out, as Satoshi says, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So you understand that Bitcoin is going to become more valuable over time because there is a limited amount. There's 21 million Bitcoin. When you understand the monetary system or the economics behind that, you then start to think long term. You're not thinking on the hamster wheel. I need to keep working as fast as I can to earn as much money. You think, actually, what can I work on long term? Which projects can I devote my time to, my life to? And I mentioned people that are doing artwork. You have Stacey Herbert, Max Kaiser that talk about the Renaissance 2.0. So if you understand what the Renaissance was back in I'm going to butcher the time now, was it 1400s, 1500s, when we had the florin
Yeah, thanks.
as a currency,
Yeah.
and the beautiful artwork that you see and sculptures and buildings that you see in Italy, that came from a sound money standard. So by bringing Bitcoin as the next monetary standard, which has fixed properties that cannot be manipulated without consensus, you're thinking about long-term projects for you and your family in the next 4, 8, 20 years. As a society, as a people, we're looking at 100, 150 years in the future. The fear experiment, which is 50 years old, which is in one generation or two generations, has changed people's mindset to think fast money. I want to earn as much as I can, as quick as I can, and it doesn't matter about the quality or the value. That's gonna deteriorate over time. We talk about there's inflation, there's shrinkflation, there's deterioration in quality. That all revolves around the monetary standard that we're on, and by having my eyes open to that, it's made me think long term into the future. What can I produce? What can I work on that I'm going to be proud of and create a legacy in the future for me, my family, and my community, which is why Coach Carbon and what I'm doing with Bitcoin Ballers and the podcast, I'm really, really passionate about, because at worst, I'm doing something that I'm passionate about and I believe I'm bringing value, whether people appreciate that value or not. I believe that I'm delivering value. And for those that receive it and give value back, I appreciate that. But what I'm trying to bring as a legacy is, okay, Coach Calvin was here helping onboard people understand what their time means to them, that their time is valuable, that it's worth something. And if I can help them understand their passion and work on that and thrive, if I can help them understand how their health and wealth and well-being was all revolved around the money system, I think then it will all be worthwhile. We'll soon see. Time will tell, as I tell people.
Absolutely. No, yeah, that's true. Absolutely. And I feel related with that because actually that's why I started this podcast. Because I was expecting, as I mentioned a couple of times, Max and Stacy are making a really great job, and I think their podcast is one of the most famous around the globe. And but what I told to people is that it is in English, so there's a barrier in El Salvador because not all of us know English. Most of the people don't know about how to speak English, so there's a barrier. So that's why education is really important. So I was thinking about how to educate people through a different way, in order that is really quick and have like instant access. And I think I thought that the same thing. The um, if you have your wallet in order to get access to Bitcoin and the bank services, we also have other apps like Fountain or YouTube or Twitter. So I thought, all right, so I should make a podcast, but the added value is that if we're making an interview, for example, this one that is in English, yours is going to be in English, mine's going to be English also, but it's going to have subtitles. So we make that barrier disappear for Spanish and the English communities. So all people have access to that, and also I'm bringing people from Spanish community. So we as Salvadorians and Latin American Spanish speaker have more content because we have it with subtitle that is in Spanish, so people can understand it if you don't speak English. And I mean, if it is in Spanish, well, it's the same language, because that happened a lot. Because I was talking with some friends before starting this podcast, that are Bitcoiners. I was talking to them like, have you seen this episode? Have you heard about this Bitcoiner? Have you seen this other podcast? And they said no, because it's in English and I don't speak English that well, so I don't get all the information. And it happened a lot. So and I was thinking, all right, and Salvador needs a lot of education right now because, as you mentioned, right now we're the core, we're the Renaissance 2.0. So people need a lot of education because a lot of people is going to El Salvador, but from around the world. But as much as people are going to El Salvador, also Salvadorans need to know what's going on there, the education, what are the values, why people around the world are coming suddenly to our country, not just because it's safe. Yeah. There's something there, so they need a lot of education, and it's not just enough education. And I'm not just talking about El Salvador or Latin America, around the world, but we need a lot of education. So yeah, I think what the value that we can bring to our communities, it's really important because, as you said, it's a legacy, and the good thing about the internet is that it stays forever.
Yeah, and I love what you've done there. So obviously you have your passion, which is Bitcoin. You've seen an opportunity. The Latin American world maybe are missing out on some great content because they can't listen to something. They can't listen to something or quite don't understand, and to have to sit and read, that's going to take time. And I mention this to people a lot now. So what we're doing on podcasts, you mentioned, is there on the internet. It's there to stay. This is our testament in time. For someone to listen to in a week's time, a year's time, 10 years time. Previously, how information was transferred, network effect, word of mouth. We'd sit by a campfire, and someone would go off to another village, another community, and spread the message. There might be a bit of loss in translation, but the message could get passed on. But that would take time. Then we had the written, we had books, which enable people to transport information through time and space. But now we have the internet. The messages that we have, and again, testament in time, the message may change slightly. We may get more information, and we may do another podcast, we may do another YouTube video with understanding without current understanding. But where we are right now, this is how we understand something. This is the message we're delivering. This is for you. We hope to bring value to you. And if you get value from it back, you can deliver that back in so many ways now. It could just be a message. It could be a shout out somewhere. But we are all now connected is so much better. And so again, going back to network effects, when people understand how network effects work, and going back to Bitcoin, and you were talking about then shitcoins that are trying to emulate Bitcoin or be what Bitcoin is or isn't. When I first got into Bitcoin, people were discussing altcoins. I didn't quite understand it. And even now, if someone mentioned an altcoin to me, I would say, what are the FABs, features and benefits? How does it compete with Bitcoin? But the first thing I'll ask, who created it? That's my first question. The second question I'll ask, well, what's the network effect? And in that, I mean, okay, how many nodes are secure in the network? How many people know about it? Because to compete against Bitcoin, you have to recreate this network effect, and you have to recreate the immaculate conception, which you cannot do. So therefore, you cannot compete. And new people into the space, they're going to have an experience of shit coins because that's just the nature of the world. But if they can bypass that, and understand what Bitcoin is straight away, they're going to do themselves a lot of favors. Again, I just want to be the person that I think I should have had back in 2018, or maybe I think it's 2017 when a friend of ours first mentioned it in the group chat. We all dismissed it. But yeah, if there's more of us now doing the education and having gone through the experience of a cycle or two, the next generation coming through on the next cycle will be that much better off.
Absolutely. No, and again, education, it's really important, and it's never enough. Actually, I want to shout out the project they're making. Well, there are a lot of projects in El Salvador right now, including El Toro was my primer Bitcoin, but right now the Lugano embassy is working with the Bitcoin office. That's from Max and Stacy, and they brought a couple of weeks ago Cypherin actually to make some masterclass, because they're making the first generation of developers, but they're fully learning about Bitcoin's developers, because I think they're going to need a lot of developers, because there are a lot of companies going. The volcano bonds are also going to be available. I don't know when, but I think this year. So because right now they're making a lot of content about that. So hopefully we will get some information from Bukele or Max or Stacy, well, from the Bitcoin office. But
yeah,
the good stuff, they're bringing the best Bitcoiners to educate people in El Salvador, and I hope that it doesn't stay just in El Salvador, that more countries get the adoption and more people are educated, and that's how we make this connection with network.
I think they will. With what we think will happen with El Salvador, when we see it succeed, other countries are going to look and say, well, what was the strategy here? And it's just, there's a word for it. And what's the word called? Where it takes on the globe. It will come back to me. Game theory. It's game theory. When other nations see what's happening in El Salvador, they'd be silly not to replicate it and emulate it. So we'll see. It will take time, but as time flies, as we all know.
Absolutely, so, but they're doing it. Costa Rica are making their own research about that, and even in Mexico. I know that a couple of Latin Americans.
I think Brazil as well, supposedly. So a lot of potential presidents in certain countries are aware. Even in America now, you have is it not Ron Kennedy? John Kennedy?
Yeah.
He's a Bitcoin advocate. Robert Kennedy, he's a Bitcoin advocate. Who's the other one? DeSantis. He's starting to understand Bitcoin. There's politicians on both sides of the benches that understand it. So exciting times. But you mentioned about the developers creating developers in El Salvador. I think is it Fold app have now taken their headquarters to El Salvador. You're going to get
it could be
an influx of businesses that then need the people on the ground. So you're creating opportunities for people that wouldn't necessarily be able to have those jobs. So if you can understand it, you're going to be way ahead of other people, say around the world, which is going to be great for the country.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask a question that I ask everyone who I have on the show. If you had a time machine and can meet yourself back when you left school? Not sure when you left school, around 16, 17. What one bit of advice would you give yourself?
Wow, that's a really good question. If I time travel and meet myself in high school, uh, spend time with your loved ones, enjoy what you're doing in the school because you're happy and you didn't know it. You didn't know
Yeah,
about it.
yeah.
Yeah, and so when I was in high school, it was 2017 and Bitcoin was 2009. I started learning about Bitcoin. No, sorry, I was no 2000. No, it was 2009. 2000, no, 2010 was my promotion. So yeah,
Okay.
start learning about Bitcoin.
Yeah. Great bit
Because
of
he was
advice.
1 year
One
old.
year, you'd be definitely
Yeah.
now. But I love what you said about enjoying your time. I just mentioned that to my daughter when I picked her up from school. I said, "Do you know these are the best times of your life?" And she looked at me like, and I looked at her and smiled because we got this summer here in the UK. Um, it takes me back to when I was at school at her age and how much I love being with my friends. And obviously, you got the learning part, but you got the social side. I think as you get older, you get more responsibilities. There's more things that you have to try and do. So yeah, enjoy the time when you're young. But for me now, which information I give to young people, and specifically my son who's turning 18 soon, is
Oh,
understand what Bitcoin is now. And I mentioned Bitcoin, but generally understand what money is. And as I said, related to time, energy, and value. If you learn about those, that it will, for me, it will pivot you, direct you to Bitcoin. But if you can understand that at a young age, you're going to buy yourself so much time in the future. And it's not just about jumping on the hamster wheel, go to university, get a job, get a career. Yes, you can do that. But I would ask yourself, are you following your passion? And by doing that, where is it going to lead you? Have a plan, have a path. You're not going to stick to that path. There's going to be diversions, but have a goal at the end that you want to work to. But do as much learning and understanding as you can, and not just state education or education in your chosen career path. Do learning outside of that that's going to make you a better person. And I would argue, understand Bitcoin first, and that will open up so many opportunities in terms of understanding the technology, people within the space, the network it's going to create. There's so much to learn from it.
yeah.
That's my little rant at the end.
Absolutely. No, I just wanted to add that Dan Prince actually is a good example. I love what he's doing with his kids. And that's because my sister is also a Bitcoiner and I have a nephew and my sister wants to make my nephew about Bitcoin. He's 3 years old, but what Dan Prince he's doing with his daughter and even with his son, it's really amazing. I think it's a good way, it's a good path. There's another way to educate them on, at least to. I think the important thing is, as you mentioned, that they have an option, so they decide by themselves know what the system says that it's good and what's not, so that they can make their own decisions based on their knowledge. So and right now, thank God that they're making a lot of content for kids and for teenagers and for everyone, and that's personally that's what we're trying to do with my nephew. So and I think it's a really good approach. And if parents are Bitcoiners, I think they should try because it's never too late. And now kids are, I think all generations says that, but the kids are, are way better than us when we were, because they're smarter, so they get things and they uh they're growing with all these technologies, so use it as a tool and not as much as entertainment, but use it as a tool, and yeah, they can have something
you
better.
you mentioned about obviously young people, your nephew. 3 years old, there's information out there. There's games you can play. Play Shamri have games that young people can play. Tuttle
Yeah,
and
total twins,
a
yeah,
TV show, cartoon. I'm
absolutely.
trying to think what technology is out there that people are educating on from, say, 2 to 3 years old to adults, different skill sets. So you could be an aeronautical engineer and have a passion for Bitcoin. There's information, technical information for you. We could be a 5 year old and want to know about money, but there's Bitcoin information created for you by
Yeah,
people that are passionate. The only thing I can think of possibly is the mobile phone, where young people use a mobile phone, people in all professions use a mobile phone. It's accessible to all, and it's going to benefit all on all different levels.
Absolutely. Dan Prince actually told me about this memory game but I don't remember, but it's a card game that you flip it and there's some concepts about Bitcoin. So it's a good way to start for kids. And as you mentioned, Total Twins also.
But yeah, that was a really good episode. So I challenged my daughter. I said if she watches the full episode, I think it's about 30 to 40 minutes, I would give her £5. I was hoping to give it to her in Satoshis, but she wanted something else instead. But she sat and watched. She understood, and then again, not that she's going to retain all the information, but as she gets older, when she hears certain keywords, buzzwords, it will ring a bell. Like, oh yes, I understand what it is. I know what it is. Yeah, I know what inflation means, which I didn't fully appreciate and understand until I was a lot older. All I thought inflation was, well, price goes up, but why? Why?
Yeah, exactly. But why? Why? That's the main thing. Why?
Yeah.
You need to ask why, not just about this, but about everything, I think.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Juan, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. And I look forward to sharing this on both our platforms. Should we do it? We should do a competition, a fountain competition.
Tell me.
A joint one. So what should we say? If someone follows both shows and sends a boost, a comment on both shows, we'll donate them each. Let's do the equivalent. I'm trying to think because I'm obviously in pounds here. Let's do a bounty.
That's actually a good idea.
Let's do a bounty.
Right.
I'm just gonna go on Wallet Satoshi now and put a number in. See what happens.
I don't know how much Satoshi is. Let's.
This is the thing with live podcasts.
You're watching it
trying to do conversion. Yeah, do it in dollars. We'll do it in dollars.
All right.
I've updated my wallet. It's Satoshi, and it's changed slightly, and I'm lost.
Yeah, one Satoshi is it's 0.0002.
Should we pledge $5 each? So the $10 bounty. So the first person to follow both shows and comment and comment. Perfect. It could be any comment. It could be just a letter or a number. But if you comment on this episode on both podcasts, you'll get a $5 bounty in sats paid by both of us. So $10 in total.
Yeah. $10.
I think all right. Hopefully that makes sense.
I think yeah. And you can and you won't just get the bonus because if you listen both podcasts, you will get Satoshis through while you're listening. So
again, value for value. Yeah, just by listening, you get rewarded. So double bubble.
Yeah. Man, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure to meet you. We talked previously on Twitter, but it's not the same that I can hear. And if you ever come to Barcelona, let me know and we hang out.
And I'll see you at the halving party.
Yeah, we'll see you in the halving party. Have a nice day.
And you take care.